We look at part 4 of Federalist 83. Please listen to part 1 of this Federalist. I've covered a few things that might be worth your while. We're going to start with paragraph 13 here. This is another one of the books that I recommend that you look at if you want to understand the Federalist Papers and the founding of this country better. Saving the Revolution, it's a collection of essays, articles by different authors. The Federalist Papers and the American Founding, it's edited by Charles Kessler, and it is published by the Free Press. So let me go ahead and start with paragraph 13. It has been observed that trial by jury is a safeguard against an oppressive exercise of the power of taxation. This observation deserves to be canvassed. Now, a scholar says that we don't know where Hamilton brings this citation from, where he quotes from. We don't know what article he refers to. And then at the same time says juries did not customarily assess taxes. That was not what juries did. But we'll continue with this paper. It is evident that it can have no influence upon the legislature in regard to the amount of the taxes to be laid, to the objects upon which they are to be imposed, or to the rule by which they are to be apportioned. If it can have any influence, therefore, it must be upon the mode of collection and the conduct of the officers entrusted with the execution of the revenue laws. As to the mode of collection in this state, in the state of New York, under our own Constitution, the trial by jury is in most cases out of use. The taxes are usually levied by the more summary proceedings of distress and sale, as in cases of rent. And it is acknowledged on all hands that this is essential to the efficacy of the revenue laws. The dilatory course of a trial at law to recover the taxes imposed on individuals would neither suit the exigencies of the public nor promote the convenience of the citizens. It would often occasion an accumulation of costs more burdensome than the original sum of the tax to be levied. So he looks at one of the cases, what they do in the state of New York. He says, look, one of these things that we do, sometimes it costs us more to get taxes from people than to actually the tax that comes into the revenue of the state. But again, he's just going to go through details or refer to, not details, he's going to show you different ways that different states deal with civil cases, to say that all the states deal with it differently. Not everybody uses jury in civil cases. If they do, it varies. And then he tries to relate it back to the main argument in this paper, that just because we haven't said in the Constitution that all civil cases need jury trial, it means that we are trying to abolish jury trial for civil cases, which he says that's not the case. The next paragraph, the excellence of the trial by jury in civil cases appears to depend on circumstances foreign to the preservation of liberty. The strongest argument in its favor is that it is a security against corruption, as there is always more time and better opportunity to tamper with a standing body of magistrates than with a jury summoned for the occasion. There is room to suppose that a corrupt influence would more easily find its way to the former than the latter. See, he says, I even agree in somewhat with those people that say having a jury in trials is good, because the lawmakers, the people who serve in the state legislature, everybody knows who they are, so they can corrupt them with money, with influence. But a jury that's going to be summoned, they don't have time, they don't know who it is to corrupt. So he says, I agree with this part, but then again, look, he's going to defend the way the provisions in the Constitution have been written, because he says, look, you can actually corrupt the sheriff that's going to tell those people that they're going to serve do jury duty, and maybe tempt them, maybe scare them, maybe do whatever the sheriff can do to influence their votes and decisions. Then he says, the force of this consideration is, however, diminished by others, by other cases, which he's going to talk about here right now. The sheriff, who is the summoner of ordinary juries, and the clerks of courts who have the nomination of special juries, are themselves standing officers, and acting individually may be supposed more accessible to the touch of corruption than the judges, who are a collective body. People might just corrupt the court clerks, might corrupt the sheriffs that go to summon these jurors. It is not difficult to see that it would be in the power of those officers to select jurors who would serve the purpose of the party, as well as a corrupted bench. In the next place, it may fairly be supposed that there would be less difficulty in gaining some of the jurors promiscuously taken from the public mass than in gaining men who had been chosen by the government for their probity and good character. So it turns the coin and says, look at the other, turns the argument up on its head. He says, but on the other hand, your average juror, just an average person, could be corrupted. Give them money, influence, give them scare them. Whereas the people whom you've elected, because you trust their honesty, their virtue, to your state legislatures may not be corrupted. So it just gives you the other side of the argument. But making every deduction for these considerations, the trial by jury must still be a valuable check upon corruption. It greatly multiplies the impediments to its success. As matters now stand, it would be necessary to corrupt both court and jury. For where the jury have gone evidently wrong, the court will generally grant a new trial. And it would be in most cases of little use to practice upon the jury unless the court could be likewise gained. Here then is a double security, and it will readily be perceived that this complicated agency tends to preserve the purity of both institutions. By increasing the obstacles to success, it discourages attempts to seduce the integrity of either. The temptations to prostitution, which the judges might have to surmount. Judges are going to sell their soul, sell their office, must certainly be much fewer while the cooperation of a jury is necessary than they might be if they had themselves the exclusive determinations of all causes. So kind of gives you all the scenarios that everybody could be corrupted. And so we know we can't have a perfect system, but we've devised one which would be, the possibility of it being corrupted is much less. And again, it's hinting that all of you guys that are saying jury trial, jury trial, jury trial, a jury trial, sometimes jurors can be corrupted much easier than if we were to leave it to the bench, to the judge, and the court system to decide. The judiciary itself to decide. The next paragraph, Notwithstanding, therefore, the doubts I have expressed as to the essentiality of trial by jury in civil cases to liberty, I admit that it is in most cases under proper regulations, an excellent method of determining questions of property, and that on this account alone it would be entitled to a constitutional provision in its favor, if it were possible to fix the limits within which it ought to be comprehended. So it's just when it comes to property rights, I agree with you. Maybe we should have something like this. If we could put a price, dollar amount that would say anything above this dollar amount deserves a trial by jury, because it's a civil case. So he agrees with his critics over here. So and continues, there is, however, in all cases, great difficulty in this. Men not blinded by enthusiasm must be sensible that in a federal government, which is a composition of societies, focused societies. Remember, he's talking about we're going to have multiple factions, people from different ethnicities, different backgrounds, whose ideas and institutions in relation to the matter materially vary from each other. He's acknowledging that different states vary in culture, customs, income, economy. That difficulty must not be a little augmented. For my own part, at every new view I take of the subject, I become more convinced of the reality of the obstacles which we are authoritatively informed prevented the insertion of a provision on this head in the plan of the convention. He says, because of our experience, we know that if we had put a provision in the Constitution, it would have to be too wide and it would not cover everything. Then we had to put lots and lots of provisions to cover all the cases. So we decided not to do this, not to mention it in the Constitution, not that we don't believe in it, but just that we believe that the national legislature would do a better job deciding which cases deserve a jury trial, which civil cases deserve a jury trial.